Okay. All right. I assume this is working. Okay, it's up there. Part 3. Some of you have been here for the first 2 parts, some just one of them, and some probably haven't seen any of this before. So just for a real brief review, the Witness of the Stars is about the zodiac. And I'm sure some of you don't know what the word zodiac is translated. It's the path or the way. And if you have read the Bible at all, you know that the way was the name given to the early Christians that took on the name of Christians. And so the way or the path, according to the zodiac, is the story of Jesus and his life here on earth and what he's gone through in the stars and the constellations. The zodiac has 12 constellations that pass through the sun each year. And maybe if I can get this to advance here. There we go. There's kind of a rough description of it, or visual of it. And let's see. It starts in Virgo and goes around throughout the year and ends in Leo. Now, in the first 2, we covered Virgo up through Pisces, and that's the first 7. So we got the last 5 that we'll cover today. And one of the things about that is that you've probably heard of horoscopes. And you know what those things are. What are horoscopes? They're Satan's counterfeits. And if there's a counterfeit, there has to be something that it counterfeits. And what it counterfeits has to be true. So the original story, if you go back to ancient times, like the earliest ancient descriptions and things that we had post-flood, the translations of the words, and again, there's some question about the quality or the veracity of some of the translations, but the star pictures that were depicted, as you see up there, they tell the story so overwhelmingly that you can probably overlook a few possible mistranslations on some because there are so many that fit the gospel story. And some of the star pictures that are currently used are not the original latest ones, and we'll cover that when we get to some of the things. There are 12 main constellations. Each constellation has 3 deacons or associated constellations that are nearby that complement that particular phase of the story. Now it's divided up into 4 books in each, 3 books divided up. There's 4 constellations in each book, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about that right here. The first book is book 1, and you can see the book 1 is Virgo, book 1 is Libra, book 1 is Scorpio, book 1 is Sagittarius. So it's the first 4 chapters, or the 4 chapters in the first book. And then in the second book, we've got Capricornus, Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries, and that's the 4 chapters in the second book. And then the last ones are Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, and Leo. And the names of them and what they do are all there. So just to give you an example of what you might have missed, and this is just a little smidgen of what it is, and you'll kind of get a little bit better idea. We started with Virgo and its deacons, and they depict the virgin birth. Virgo, translated virgin. What about Jesus? Where did he first come to earth? When he was born of a virgin. And some of the star names in the deacons are the translations of it. I'm not going to try and give the names, but the translations of it. The longed for, the despised sin offering, or the pierced. These translations all fit so well that to me, It's, it's amazing. There's another star picture that we covered that showed the dual nature of Christ. And there's another one that's coming up that will also show that. And Christ, of course, was God and man, and that was depicted in that. And what's interesting about that, that constellation in the heavens was directly above the Southern Cross. Wow. You know, I mean, to me, that is so amazing, how all this fits together. We also, another constellation was called Draco. And this is one of the deacons of one of the others. Draco translates dragon. Where does that fit? And how about some of the star names there? The deceiver. Who is to be destroyed? I mean, it's a fascinating story, but the clincher for me, even with all this, were the Bible verses that correlated to these star names or the picture, star pictures or whatever it was. There were multiple Bible verses that we covered that fit so well. It's almost like God did something in advance when he created these stars before he created the Word or gave us the Word, but it is just amazing. So what you'll notice here, chapter 1, which is the book ones in each of these, are about the prophecies of Christ, or prophecies about Christ. Chapter 2, the second books in each of these, is about Christ's work linked with grace. The third chapters in each of these books is Christ's work linked with conflict. And then the last one is the fulfillment of the prophecies from book 1 in victory. So that's pretty much the background of it. Now, just a little bit here, since we're starting with chapter 4 in book 2. The first book, it began with the goat dying in sacrifice. That was Capricornus. And it ends with the lamb here, the Aries, with the lamb living again. And the goat has a tail of a fish, which indicates that his death was for a multitude of the redeemed, because the fish, if you recall from early Christian here, they had the fish symbol, and that is a symbol of the Christians or the redeemed. The two middle chapters that we covered also presented the fish redeemed in grace and in conflict. So we could spend, a whole 2 hours going back over all of this, so I kind of want to cut it short here. And this last chapter ends with the victory and triumph through the atonement by the blood of the Lamb. So we will go ahead and get into this. The deacons in this book here from the Aries are Cassiopeia, the enthroned woman, or the captive delivered and preparing for her husband, the Redeemer. And of course, we all know what a woman is and what that represents, the church, and that is the redeemed. The second deacon is Cetus. It's the sea monster, and that's the great enemy bound. And the last deacon is Perseus, the breaker, and that's delivering the redeemed. So, Aries, the lamb that was slain or prepared for victory. The name of stars, one of the stars, is the pierced or the wounded. I'm not going to try and pronounce all these foreign language names because some of them are, Egyptian, some are even go back Babylonian, the ancient parts. Some are Hebrew, some are Greek. So I'll try and, if I think I can do it, I'll try it. And the slain is another star name. And the bruised or the wounded, and the bound. Now the ram in this picture here is full of vigor and life, and it's not falling in death like the previous ones, like Capricornus, for example. And in Hebrew, it's called al-hamal, which is the sheep, gentle and merciful. And it's also translated in Syriac as the lamb of sacrifice, and another in Akkadian means the sacrifice of righteousness. So that gives you an indication of Aries here. And Cassiopeia is the enthroned woman. It's the captive delivered and preparing for her husband, the Redeemer. And she is seated in the heavens, and if we had a large star chart, you would see that she's close by Cepheus, the king, which would be the next deacon. And Cassiopeia, translated the glorified woman. And in Arabic, it's the freed, and set up as queen in Egyptian. And the enthroned, or the beautiful in Chaldee. And some of the stars, this is just a translation of Cassiopeia, by the way. Some of the stars, there's just a few, the freed again, and the enthroned. And then we go to Cetus, which is the sea monster, and it's the great enemy bound. And I guess it shows up a little better on the bigger screen, but you can see that it does have a tail of a fish there, kind of. It's a creature with dragon and fish-like features, which can also represent those who claim to be Christians but are false ones. The dragon part would be the lying part of it, and the fish would be they're claiming to be Christians. You know, and how many times do we hear about stories of people who say they're Christians but certainly don't act like it? Some of the star names here: overthrown or thrust down, the rebel, the bound or chained enemy. And the Egyptian name would be subdued, and it's the largest constellation. So Revelation 20, verses 1 through 3, our scripture reading. And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold of the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he must be loosed a little season. And then we have Perseus, which is the last deacon here, which is the breaker. His Egyptian name is he who fights and subdues. In his right hand, he carries his mighty sword, ready to smite the enemy. In his left, he carries the head of his foe, who he has slain. His feet are planted on the brightest star part of the Milky Way, and there are wings on his feet, indicating he is coming quickly. So this, again, is a picture of Christ. Micah 2, 12, 13, I will surely gather the remnant of Israel. The breaker has come up before them. They have broken up and have passed through the gate and are gone out by it. And their king shall pass before them, and the Lord on the head of them. And some of the star names: who helps, who carries away, who breaks, the head of the adversary, the subdued, the evil spirit rolling around. And Al-Gol is another name for Goliath. And David slew Goliath and cut off his head, in a shadow picture of Christ and Satan. And so it's another depiction of Christ. So summing up the messages in Aries and its deacons, the sacrificial lamb has gained the victory over his enemy, and that's from Aries. The captive bride has been redeemed and is awaiting her bridegroom, and that's Cassiopeia. The defeated enemy has been subdued, chained, and bound, and that's Cetus. And with Perseus, our Redeemer, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, is coming quickly. Can't wait for that, for sure. So the second book that we just completed started with the prophecy of the coming sacrifice in Capricornus. And this constellation pointed to the time when the light of the world would appear, the coming sacrifice. the sun was in the sign of Capricornus at the time of Christ's birth. And that wasn't an accident, was it? Well, what's interesting, the book closes with the fulfillment of the prophecy by the slaying of the Lamb 33 and a half years later, was it? The sun was in the sign of Aries at the exact time of the crucifixion. So it fits the pattern in the stars. So if somebody wants to argue about this theory or whatever you want to call it, I'll let them. But I'm convinced there's just way too many, too much evidence. So book 3, we've got the Redeemer and his second coming. Everything else has occurred, and the glory that should follow. So the constellations, the 4 main ones of the Mazzaroth here, are Taurus the bull, and basically the redemption's complete now. There's no more sorrow or suffering or conflict. The references in the stars are going to be related to the second coming. So with Taurus the bull, that is a prophecy of the coming judge of all the earth. And Gemini, the twins, relates to the dual nature of the coming ruler. And Cancer, the crab, shows the Messiah's brought safely home, and all the conflict is over. And the last one would be Leo the lion, and it tells of the Messiah's completed triumph. So those are the 4 that we'll be covering here in book 3. So for Taurus, chapter 1, the Messiah coming to rule, we have 3 deacons, and they are Orion, the coming prince, light breaking forth in the person of the Redeemer. Eridanus, the river of the judge, wrath breaking forth for his enemies. And Auriga, the shepherd, safety for the redeemed in the day of wrath. So Taurus the bull, the Messiah coming to rule. In all the ancient depictions, the bull is in the act of pushing or rushing. In other words, he's in a hurry to get this over with. The common Hebrew name is Shur, which means coming or ruling. And the Egyptians named him Isis, which we all hear as a negative word, but again, it's how it's used. Who saves or delivers? Well, they can refer to their gods, but we know that that's a false god. But when you put it in this context, it's appropriate. And some of the star names, the leader or governor, the wounded or slain, and the congregation of the judge or ruler. And that's Pleiades, the star cluster, so there's quite a few in there. Did I hit all that? Yeah, okay. So we've got Orion, the coming prince, light breaker, breaking forth in the person of the Redeemer. The Egyptian name is This is He Who Triumphs. And the Akkadian name was the Light of Heaven. And it's the most brilliant of all the constellations. I think most of you, if you've been out there, first thing I've ever been able to see is Orion's belt, and from there you kind of get the rest of it. 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 8, and then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. So the spirit of prophecy suggests, and I've read this a number of times, that when Jesus comes, he's going to be coming to take us to heaven, but he comes from the constellation Orion, which is where heaven is located. So that is very interesting that it also fits. Some of the star names here, again, will also, the coming of the branch, that's Betelgeuse, or quickly coming or swiftly destroying. The wounded one, who bruises, who breaks, treading on. The foot that crushes, bruised. Other star meanings: the branch, the mighty, the ruler, the prince, the strong, coming or coming forth. 1 Peter 5:8, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. You might notice in this picture there that Satan is the roaring lion in Orion's hand, being dealt a death blow. We now have Eridanus, the river of the judge, wrath breaking forth for his enemies. Daniel 7:9-11. I watched till thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was a fiery flame, its wheels a burning fire. A fiery stream, hint, hint, issued and came forth from before him. 1,000 thousands ministered to him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated, and the books were opened. I watched then because of the sound of the pompous words which the horn was speaking. I watched till the beast was slain, and its body destroyed and given to the burning flame. Nahum 1:6. Who can stand before his indignation, and who can abide the fierceness of his anger? His fury is poured out like fire. The river of the judge is a fiery river that relates to the final judgment, when the wicked will be cast into the lake of fire. And Auriga is the shepherd, safety for the redeemed in the day of wrath. In his Isaiah 40, verses 10-11. See, the sovereign Lord comes with power, and he rules with a mighty arm. See, his reward is with him, and his recompense accompanies him. He tends his flock like a shepherd. He gathers the lambs in his arms and carries them close to his heart. He gently leads those that have young. John 10:11. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Some star names. The band of ewes, wounded or slain. Now you notice in his right hand, if I can get this pointer to work here, his right hand, come on, there we go. There's his right hand, and those are the bands that have been loosed. The same bands of persecution that once held the church. In his left hand, that's right down here, he cradles a couple of little ewes in his hand, and they tenderly is holding the flock, and the female's the bigger one, and then two of the younger, and that's his left hand. So it shows his shepherd-like qualities again there. So summing up Taurus and its deacons. Christ is coming with all power to rule and to judge the world in righteousness. The Prince of Peace comes triumphantly, having utterly defeated the enemy. The wicked are destroyed in the fiery judgment, as God is a consuming fire. And there is life and salvation for the sheep of his flock when Christ comes to reign and rule in judgment. Chapter 2, the Messiah reigns as Prince of Peace. This is Gemini, the twins, the twofold nature of the king. The deacons, Lepus, the hare, the enemy trodden underfoot. Canis Major, or the dog, or Sirius, the coming glorious Prince of Peace, Prince of Princes. And Canis Minor, the second dog, or Procyon, the exalted Redeemer. Now, the names of these three deacons and their corresponding pictures are relatively modern, as indicated by their Latin names here. And we'll look to the ancient zodiac to learn their real meanings and the words of the stars that are in them. So we'll start with Gemini, the twins, the twofold nature of the king. And again, this is the one that shows Christ as God and man. Babylonians called this figure on the left, Murdoch, the great restorer, which would refer to Christ. And ancient astronomers called the right figure a female his spouse. And again, what is a female in? It's the church, the bride of Christ. Some star names that go with it. The one whose heel was bruised, or the wounded one. The judge, the ruler. Set or seated in place, like on a throne. Gemini does not mean twins, but rather means the two who are alike. The bride of Christ, the two are alike because his people have taken on the character of Christ. They're at peace. The victory is won. Both the club and the bow are in repose, as you can see in the left hand there. No longer needed. And I can't wait. Okay, we've got lepus or lepus, the hare, the enemy trodden underfoot. In the Persian planisphere, way back when, this constellation is pictured as a serpent. Again, we said this is more of a modern one, but we look to the ancients. In the Egyptian zodiac, there is an unclean bird standing on the serpent, and its name is, I'm not even going to try that, which is confounded and confused. Star names here, the mad, I think Satan's mad, deceiver, bound, the enemy of him who cometh. Malachi 4:3, you shall trample the wicked, for they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet. Now, it might be interesting to know, as you can see right here, the enemy is directly under the foot of Orion, and the foot looks like it's coming down. And if you remember the translation of the star Rigel, it means the foot that crushes. So it fits together so well. And now we have Canis Major, the dog, or Sirius, the coming glorious prince of princes. And again, the star names here will help us. The prince, the ruler, the glorious, who shall come down, the mighty, the leader, the chief, the prince of the right hand. Okay, let's go back one. Okay, in the Egyptian zodiac, this is pictured as a hawk, and the Greek have it here as a dog, but the star name, it points to the real subject of this constellation. Who shall come down, the glorious, the prince. I mean, we know who it's referring to. And Canis Minor, the second dog, or Procyon, the exalted redeemer. Star names are Procyon, the redeemer. Bearing for others, the prince or ruler. Who completes or perfects. And so that also points to Christ. So we'll sum this up here. The redeemed, the bride of Christ, is united with the Prince of Peace and will reign with him. Orion, or Christ, is crushing the head of Lepus, the serpent. The coming prince of the right hand is bright and shining, as well as the leader, ruler, and judge. Jesus sits at the right hand of the Father in heaven. And Jesus, as the suffering Savior, is ultimately conquering and victorious. So chapter 3 is Cancer, or the crab, the possessions held fast. The decans, Ursa Minor, the lesser bear, or the lesser sheepfold, which is a better translation. Ursa Major, the fold in the flock. And Argo, the ship, the redeemed pilgrim safe at home. So Cancer, the possessions held fast. The figure associated with this sign is most definitely altered. The ancient Egyptian named this claria, meaning a fold, containing something in safety as indicated by the star names. It's a star, whatever it is a star cluster, and it means multitude or offspring. The holding, the sheltering or hiding place, the assembled thousands. And who do you think the assembled thousands are in the holding place? The redeemed, of course. And the lambs. Cancer in Arabic comes from the word khan, which means the traveler's resting place, and sur, which means encircled or embraced. It's obvious that this sign speaks of a sheepfold for sheep, a cattle fold for cattle, or a resting place for a weary traveler. Here we come to the completion of his work in relation to his redeemed, as we'll see in the last sign in relation to his enemies. This heavenly prophetic picture displays the Bible truth of a time when we Christians will be safe and secure in our heavenly home. This sign also shows that we are embraced as a possession. The deacon signs will expand on this theme here. We have Ursa Minor, Ursa Major, and Argo. These three deacons developed the truth of this sign. Ursa Minor is most accurately called the lesser flock. Ursa Major is definitively the sheepfold and the sheep. And Argo the ship represents a company of travelers, usually a multitude of travelers, who are the possession of him who cometh. So Ursa Minor, the Greeks called it Arax, meaning bear, but the root is the stronghold of the saved, commonly known as the Little Dipper. In ancient times, the pole star, or the gate, was the dragon star, or Alpha Draconis. Thus, the pivot point of the night sky was then in the enemy's possession. But the dragon star has moved away from the pole star, while the lesser sheepfold has come into place, so that Polaris, or the North Star, now forms the gate of the sheepfold. Genesis 22:17, and thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. Some of the star names here. Waiting for him who cometh, the redeemed assembly, and the stronghold of the saved. Picture of the bear goes no further back than the Greeks. And the bears in these two signs, Ursa Minor and Ursa Major, they have raised tails, which is not true of bears, and they're long. And it seems to be a misunderstanding of the words of the translation. The old Persian word for bear is similar to the word for sheepfold, and the Greeks mistakenly took one word for the other. All the names agree with Cancer that we are the assembled sheep of his fold, waiting for him who cometh. Okay, Ursa Major, the fold and the flock. Now here's the Big Dipper, just for your information. See the red line up there that just popped up? We'll just kind of outline it here. So there's where the Big Dipper comes. And of course, the North Star, if you were to follow up here, it'd be up here somewhere. In its original form was that of a sheepfold and continues the messages of Cancer. The Hebrews called it Ash, the assembled, and the Arabs called it the assembled together as in a sheepfold. Star names here: a herd of animals or a flock, the flock or purchased, numbered, the sheepfold, the protected redeemed. The Egyptians named this sign Bent Har or Har, the one who terrifies the serpent. This speaks of the Christian who can resist the devil, and the devil will flee in terror. The little fold precedes the greater fold, and that's in the sky in heaven. And it just makes me think about, does that relate to the 1,000 years where in heaven preceding eternity on the new earth, one before the other. Just a non-biblical thought. Okay. Argo, the ship, redeemed pilgrims safe at home. Okay. The third and final deacon of Cancer is Argo and is pictured as a ship with its sails up and the oars backwards, showing that it is docking. This is the ship of mythology that carried Jason and the Argonauts in their quest for the Golden Fleece. Jason recovered the great treasure from the serpent that guarded it. The name Argo means the company of travelers. This ship has gone on its dangerous journey with its crew, made it through all of the problems and trials, and is now safe in its home port. Argo represents a traveler safely home, having won the victory. This ship has a figure of a man's face at the waterline, and if you can see that right here, which seems to be carrying the ship on its back. Who might that be? Some have seen this as a picture of Noah's Ark, which in the time of the flood saved Noah from the waters of judgment. But I kind of think of it as Christ carrying that ship on his back and everything. Star names here. The possession of him who cometh, the multitude, the released who travel. So Cancer and its deacons. The Messiah has completed his work in reference to the redeemed. We are the assembled sheep of his fold, awaiting him who cometh. The sheep, or the people of God, are assembled, guarded, and purchased, and are safe and secure. And the travelers and pilgrims have been brought safely home. The conflict is over. And that is what we're all waiting for. And so that completes most of it, but there's still one issue that has to be taken care of. Chapter 4, the Messiah's consummated triumph, the Lion of the tribe of Judah aroused for the rending of the enemy. The deacons, well, before we get there, here we come to the end of the circle. We began with Virgo and we end with Leo, as hinted by the Sphinx, which has the head of a woman and body of a lion. And it tells the story of the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. And so the decans here, Hydra, the serpent, that old serpent, the devil, destroyed. Crater, the cup of divine wrath poured out on him. And Corvus, the crow or raven, birds of prey devouring him. So Leo the lion, star names, treading underfoot. The judge or Lord who cometh, the exaltation, the enemy put down, the joining, which indicates where the two ends of the circle were joined with Virgo. Revelation 5:5. Then one of the elders said to me, do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals. Leo the lion, the king of the beast, is pouncing on the head of the serpent Hydra, ready to crush it. Can't really see that here in this depiction, but that's where it is. And the Egyptian name means the pouring out, as in the cup of divine wrath on the serpent. The Hebrews called it Aria, the line tearing or rendering, and the Arabs called it or translated it as the lion who rends. This sign speaks of the wrath and judgment of God. And the names of this sign all reveal the message found in the book of Revelation, and the deacons tell the story with great accuracy. Hydra, this old serpent the devil destroyed. The meaning of Hydra is abhorred. The Persians called Hydra the serpent of Eve. Star names, the separated, put away. The piercing of the deceiver. And in these final three constellations, we'll see the consummation of all the previous prophecies in the heavens by the total destruction of the old serpent, all his seed, and all his work. Crater, the cup of divine wrath poured out on him. Okay. The great city split into three parts, and the cities of the nations collapsed. God remembered Babylon the Great and gave her the cup filled with the wine of the fury of his wrath. That was Revelation 16:9. I forgot to mention that to start. Okay. Psalm 11:6. Upon the wicked he shall rain snares, fire and brimstone, and a horrible tempest. This shall be the portion of their cup. Revelation 14:9-10. A third angel followed them and said in a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and his image and receives his mark on the forehead or on the hand, he too will drink of the wine of God's fury, which he has poured full strength into the cup of his wrath. Yeah, okay. So now we have Corvus, the crow or raven, and birds of prey devouring him. Revelation 19, verses 17 through 21. And I saw an angel standing in the sun who cried in a loud voice to all the birds flying in midair, come, gather together for the great supper of God, so that you may eat the flesh of kings, generals, and mighty men, of horses and their riders, and the flesh of all their armies gathered together to make war against the rider on the horse and his army. But the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet who had performed the miraculous signs on his behalf. With these signs he had deluded those who had received the mark of the beast and worshipped his image. The two of them were thrown alive into the fiery lake of burning sulfur. The rest of them were killed with the sword that come out of the mouth of the rider on the horse, and all the birds gorged themselves on their flesh. So summing this up, Leo and its deacons. The Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has triumphed. The serpent has been destroyed and put away for good. The cup of God's wrath is poured out on Satan and his followers. And the birds will feast at the final destruction of evil and of Satan and his followers. So you've now heard the completed message that God has declared to the world. And if you remember Psalm 119, the heavens declare the glory of God. These are how he's done it. God hung these signs or banners in the heavens to tell of the plan of his redemption through Jesus Christ. Both the prophetic word of God and the signs of the ancient zodiacs and their pictures all tell the same story. So we are finally to the end of part 3 and the witness of the stars. So our closing song, I believe, is number 86. How great thou art.